All right, so game plan for this lesson. This one is where we're kind of catching a lot of material before I do the last two. I honestly would love to take tonight's lesson and divide it into 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 other lessons, because there's always so much content and there's never time enough to go as deep in everything as we would like to. So you can tell that your handout is mostly just the text. It's a chance for you to just jot down notes. And what I'm going to do is we're going to read the text. I'm going to provide just running commentary through these chapters tonight. And there's not really much, there's no blanks to fill out. There's really nothing in the handout besides the text, but that's your chance for just filling in some running commentary. I might be able to stop and slow down for a couple questions if we can. To recap and get a little bit of a running start at it is to go back and recall where we ended 2 sessions ago at the end of chapter 11, before we started into the chapter 12 and chapter 13 lesson last week. And we were looking at this section from trumpet number 7, and this is how chapter 11 ends. The time has come for judging the dead and rewarding your servants, the prophets, and people who revere your name, both small and great, and for destroying the whole earth. John is like that classic preacher trope, like 30 minutes in, when the preacher says, well, it's about time for me to start my sermon. And then another 45 minutes later, in conclusion, and then another 45 minutes later, they would finally wrap it up. Like that idea where he says, oh, I'm almost done here. And then almost done means I've just begun. That's what John is like. So here we are in the end of chapter 11, which is the hinge between the first half and the second half. And that's one of the things that I like about the Bible Project video is it structures it very closely to the way that I would structure it. And the fact that it had to split it into 2 videos. If you're going to split it into 2 videos, you got to crack the thing open in the middle. And it cracked it open down the middle the same way that I would by putting half of it in the first 11 chapters and the other half from chapter 12 to 22. So when he says the time has come, about time to wrap this book up. Except we've got another 13 chapters to go, or 12 chapters to go to wrap this whole book. So it's quite a bit more content, but he does say the time has come. That is a tiny little example of what we've been calling recapitulation, where we have intensifying repetition. So he's brought us to the end several times at the last seal and the last trumpet. And he's going to bring us to the end several more times before we are done. But the other big idea from this passage is it's time to destroy those who destroy the earth. Who are those who destroy the earth? We talked about this last week. This is the last verse of chapter 11. Then we begin chapter 12. It begins with that woman crying out labor pains, but we soon find that there's a dragon ready to devour the child. And we're introduced to the dragon. And then here's the chiasm that I've used a couple times already in this class, and that Henry used in his message this morning, just for the sake of dating this for the video. Today is May 15th. And in our morning message here at 10 Mile, our Pastor Henry preached chapter 31 of the story and was looking through the whole book of Revelation in one shot, and he used this exact same outline, and he didn't steal it from me. I didn't steal it from him. We both stole it from actually the same teachers that we had. Henry took the book of Revelation, I believe, underneath Shane Wood. I've referenced him several times in the series. Shane and I were classmates together in undergrad and in grad school, and we were both research assistants for Dr. Robert Lowry, a scholar that was at Lincoln Christian Seminary, and he passed away several years ago, but we were both his research assistants. He was the year after I was. So that's kind of where we got this common material there. But the second half, after we crack open the book of Revelation, the second half is structured in this chiasm, and it answers the question, who are those who are destroying the earth? Because it's time for them to be destroyed. Well, let's introduce those who are destroying the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, door number 1 is a dragon. And door number 2 are 2 beasts, one out of the earth, one out of the sea. One is the beast. The other was also described as a false prophet. There's 2 times when the second beast is identified as a false prophet. Then in chapter 14, we are introduced to Babylon the Great. We'll see that here in just a moment. That's the first time Babylon is introduced. And then in the middle of the chiasm are the 7 bowls. Also, right there next to the 7 bowls is the harvest of the earth. I would put that together as the center of the chiasm. And then going back out, we see the destructions. The destruction of Babylon in chapter 17 and 18, and a little bit into 19, the destruction of the 2 beasts in chapter 19, and then finally the destruction of the dragon in chapter 20. So all of those introductions and destructions, and that's the second half of the book. So here we go. We're going to read along the text, and I'll give some running commentary as we go. Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb. Just to unpack that, we've seen standing. When I say standing, wherever we pointed out things that stand, the dragon stood where? At the shore of the sea. The great day of the wrath of the Lamb has come, and who can stand? And then who can stand? There's a great multitude standing. Okay, so now the Lamb is standing, and this Lamb that was standing, last time we saw the Lamb, one of the times that we saw the Lamb was back, the first time we saw the Lamb was back in chapter 4, and he stood on the throne, in the center of the throne. He was standing, there was one sitting on the throne, but the Lamb was standing on the throne. And now the Lamb is still standing, and he's standing on Mount Zion, not near the shore of the sea. And hold on to this Lamb that is standing, because in a moment we're going to see a harlot, a woman, and she won't be standing, she'll be sitting, and she's going to be sitting on many waters, and then she'll be sitting on 7 hills. So there's standing and sitting are both postures of authority. Sitting is a passive posture, standing is more of an active posture of authority. So this Lamb is now standing, and the Lamb is not alone. Who can stand with the Lamb? 144,000. That was the number of God's people, 12, times the number of God's people, 12, times 1,000, the complete total number of God's people standing with the Lamb on Mount Zion. And again, we talked about Mount Zion in contrast to the many waters or the 7 hills, but why is Mount Zion important? What else stood on Mount Zion? There was the temple. The temple stood on Mount Zion. But we're going to get to chapter 21 in the New Jerusalem, and there is no temple, because what is the temple? The Lamb is the temple, and his people are the temple. So who's standing on Mount Zion? When it says that the Lamb and the 144,000 are standing on Mount Zion, have we covered this theme? We've covered the theme. John could have just said what Paul said in Ephesians. God's people is like a temple. He could have said what Peter said in 1 Peter. God's people are like a temple. But this is an apocalypse, and John's very Jewish. And so he's going to tell us 20 different ways that God's people are the temple, because they, together with Jesus, stand on Mount Zion. Whew, we've made it halfway through a verse. The 144,000 had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. How did chapter 13 end? Something was written, something was marked on the foreheads of those who followed the beasts. Okay? And now we have the name of the Lamb on the forehead of the 144,000. Keep in mind that chapter break was not put there by John. That chapter break came 1,000 years after the New Testament was written. So if John in one sentence, like we pay way too much attention to chapter breaks sometimes. If you ignore that chapter break and it just goes from the idea that there are people who are marked on the hand and on the forehead with a mark of a beast so that they can buy and so that they can sell, here comes this one. They have the name of the Lamb and his father's name on their foreheads. You want to know how to not have the mark of the beast? You get the name of the Lamb and the name of the father of the Lamb on your forehead, and you don't have to worry about the mark of the beast, because it's not barcodes and it's not Monster energy drink. And it's not the nonsense. It's not a computer chip that they're going to put in you to track your medical records. That might be kind of cool. I might be in for that. I don't know. Could be interesting. I mean, they won't be able to track me any more than they already do. So, I mean, I've heard so many people say, I don't want them tracking me, as they've texted me on their phone. A good thing you don't want them to track you. Okay. I heard a voice, verse 2. I heard a voice from heaven like a roar of many waters and the sound of loud thunder. We heard voices from heaven back in chapter 4. We've heard voices from heaven several times already. Remember, the voice of the second beast was like the voice of a dragon, but this is a voice of many waters and sounds like thunder. And what happens at thunder? When the thunder was rolling in heaven, and the thunder was rolling in the sixth seal and the seventh trumpet, at the end when the wrath was poured out. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harp. So what is it? Like a roar of waters, like a sound of thunder, or like harpists playing on their harp? Yes. Yes. I mean, this is, see, John was obviously prophesying the idea of bass guitars and amps. Playing a power chord, something like that. They were singing a new song before the throne. And look who comes back. Here's the four living creatures. The four living creatures come back from chapter 4 and 5. And before the elders, chapter 4 and 5, the 24 elders. And so the 144,000 are singing with the living creatures, with the elders. We've got a picture of that temple in heaven. Remember in chapter 4 and 5? We drew the temple in heaven. It's the same image. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. There is a knowledge that only God's people knows. Unlike those who had been marked with the beast, they were deceived by the false prophet. They had false knowledge. But these people have true knowledge of a song that no one else knows. Would you like to be deceived, or would you like to know the song that no one knows? It is these, okay, no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed. What does it mean to be redeemed? You were bought. If you have a name on your forehead, you've been bought. If you have a mark of a beast, you can buy and sell. Would you like to buy and sell, or would you like to be bought? We want to be bought. Whew. Yeah. And so this image that participating in the economy, it's better to belong to Jesus than to be a full participant in the economy. How many, let's just pause on that. If we can go into this, this will definitely dovetail as we talk about Babylon. But talking about Babylon, Babylon is that image of the evil forces of materialism, the economy that draw us away from Jesus. How many times have we been told, well, sure, it might be culturally evil, but it's good for the economy? Porn websites, sports gambling, state lotto. Legalization of recreational drugs, good for the economy. Right, yeah. Yeah. All that kind of stuff that we say, well, it's good for the economy. Do you want to be able to buy and sell, or do you want to be faithful to the one who bought you? This is the application. Now, you got it, man. You got it. That's exactly what we're talking about. You have eyes open. You have eyes open to see this is what it looks like. When you see your headline and it says we got to legalize marijuana in our state because of all the tax revenue that we're losing out on, because wouldn't it be a shame we're missing out on so many opportunities for our economy. So who cares? I've been bought. I don't need that buying and selling. Yeah. That's that kind of idea. And when you have that idea, then you see what John sees. You identify Babylon and the harlot for who she is, and that's what she looks like right now in our neighborhood in 2022. And she has taken many forms in many other generations all around the world, but that's what it looks like right now. You're getting it. This is more fun now when you're starting to like see how it works, and we can see like, oh wow, the world around me, this speaks so much of the world around me, but not in the ways that sell the books, not in the ways that are sensational, just, that say that, Putin is the Antichrist or something like that. But to realize that the Babylon is still trying to sell me something that would cost me to be compromised by the one who bought me. Verse 4, it is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. This is going to be in contrast to the people who follow the beast and the people who follow the harlot. The harlot is drunk, and people are drunk on the wine of her adulteries. But these, they are virgins. Is this trying to say that the church needs to be completely celibate? I don't think that that's the teaching of this at all. I think it's just a contrast, because the evil mother is going to be a harlot. We've already got a good mother. She gave birth to us back in chapter 12. The dragon went to make war against all of her offspring. Well, you can't have offspring with it and still remain a virgin, except for Mary. She was able to pull that off. But otherwise, offspring, but we're talking about spiritual offspring. And so this virginity is an image of spiritual purity. I've mentioned before that the temptation is that sexual immorality. And so this is the idea of the opposite of that. Sadly, it has been taken a little bit too literally to enforce celibacy and some extreme forms of asceticism. I do think that God intended the sexual relationship to be exclusively within the context of a marriage covenant, but that's still pure. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about that level of purity. Did you have a question back there, Devin?
I was just wondering,
Yes. Oh, I like that. Yeah, because this people is going to be a bride, and she's going to wear white. So, yeah, I love that. Yeah, great connection there, because chapter 19 will have the bride, and she's made herself ready for her groom. So here's the people that are going to be the bride. Great image there. And that bride is the opposite of the harlot. And so we, the people of the bride, are the opposite of the people of the harlot. So our character as the bride's people is going to be opposite of the character of the harlot's people. That's what we're talking about. Great observation. Redeemed from mankind, the first fruits for God and the Lamb. In their mouth was no lie, for they were blameless. Continuing on. In verse 6, I saw another angel flying directly overhead. One of the things I want to do, I haven't gotten around to doing it yet. I need to open up a concordance and just start counting how many angels. I haven't, if you want to beat me to it, go for it. Open up a concordance, count how many different angels are here. I have this hunch that it's going to be a cool number, but I'll find out once I do the counting. So another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel, to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth and to every nation, tribe, language, people. There it is, the totality of the earth, counting 4, nation, tribe, people, language. And the angel is proclaiming the gospel. And he said with a loud voice, here's the gospel: fear God, give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Man, it didn't it say that like it was about to come in chapter 11? It's still coming. And worship him who made heaven and earth, the seas and the springs of water. That's the first angel. The first angel is saying, here's the gospel, you better repent. Who should repent? All the earth, every tribe, language, people, nation. And then another angel, a second angel, following behind that first one, says, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all the nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, for adulteries. And that we're going to see her in chapter 17. So in chapter 17, she is a harlot drinking wine. And as a harlot, she's full of passion and sexual immorality. But in chapter 18, she's Babylon. It's both. It's a composite image. Just like the woman that was giving birth in chapter 12, she was both the old covenant people of God and the new covenant people of God. That city woman image, and she's a city woman image, and she's full of materialism and sexual immorality. Verse 9. And another angel, a third, followed them, saying in a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, there it is, that mark of the beast again. Normally people, when they freak out about the mark of the beast, they go to chapter 13, but it pops back up. And again, it's still contrasted to the seal of the Lamb with the Lamb's name written on our forehead. So the mark, if anyone worships the beast and its image, and we talked about that image back in chapter 13, receives a mark on his hand or his forehead or on his hand, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb. Here is that picture of judgment. Hold on to that picture of wine. Now, the harlot drank wine, but the one on the throne is also making some wine. And that's a wine of the winepress of wrath, the wrath of God. Now, again, these wine images are going to come back up because we're going to see the harvest of the earth in the next section, the next slide, and we'll see pressing the wine press. And then again, the harlot in chapter 17 is going to be drinking wine. So this wine image, on one hand, it is the drunkenness of this tool of Satan for materialism and sexual immorality. It's that drunkenness. And then wine is used when it's coming from God. It is the results of his judgment. Wine flows a lot like blood flows. They're both that dark red, and in communion, Jesus himself used wine as a symbol for his blood. This is the blood of my covenant. What he told us when he instituted the Lord's Supper. Okay. Verse 11. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day or night. These worshipers of the beast and its image, who forever receive the mark of its name. There it is. They're judged. We're looking at, like, this is the angels predicting the end of the earth that's going to happen again in this next scene. So that's the warning. We've got three angels that say, here's the gospel. Babylon's going to fall. You better repent, because here comes judgment, and it's only for the evil ones. It's only for the wicked. This is a spiritual judgment that is poured out on those who follow the beast and the harlot, because by following them, they're ultimately following the dragon. Verse 12, saints, get ready. Hold on tight. Here is a call for the endurance of the saints. That's what I mean when I say hold on tight. Those who are the saints? Those who keep the commands of God and their faith in Jesus. You want to be one of the saints? Keep your faith in Jesus, keep the commands of God. That's the opposite of everything else that was up above. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this. Here's a beatitude. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. Those who have died in the Lord, they're taken care of. They're protected. And Henry touched on this. The idea was that Satan had a tool that he could use. He could try to kill God's people as a way of separating them from him. And when he would separate them from him, he could enter into heaven and he could accuse the saints. That's why Satan literally means the accuser. But at the Christ event, he is cast out of heaven in chapter 12. And that Christ event was summarized in the birth of the one who holds the baby, who holds the iron rod, and when he ascended to the throne. The Christ event, from the birth to the ascension, the Christ event. And that Christ event caused Satan to be cast out of heaven. So the tool that Satan used to have to be able to separate people from God because he could kill them and then accuse them, Satan no longer has that tool anymore. Because if he kills any of them, he doesn't separate them from God. They just go right to him. He can't separate us from God anymore. His greatest strategy now works backwards. His biggest weapon accomplishes the opposite of his goal. So what is there left for him to do? And that's why I keep bringing up, he will push, he will pull, he will trick. But if you hold on tight, he can't separate you, even if you die in the process. That's the image of Revelation. So that's why it calls for patient endurance. Those who keep the commands of God and their faith in Jesus, blessed are those who die in the Lord. They're safe. They're safe. So if you're dead, if you're alive, hold on tight. If you're dead, he's holding on tight to you. That's it. That's what this is saying. Either way, hold on tight. We're taken care of. So here comes the harvest of the earth. And why do we not need to worry about the harvest of the earth? Because we're holding on tight to him and he's holding on tight to us. So here comes the harvest of the earth in verse 14. I looked and behold, a white cloud. Seated on the cloud was one like a son of man. Pause. Who? You better know the Old Testament reference here. We brought it up a couple times. It's brought up many times in the Gospels as Jesus is teaching and responding. And it's also brought up even more times in the epistles. Someone in the back row, what is it? What? Daniel 7, verse 13 and 14. Yes, Daniel 7, verse 13 and 14. This is one like a son of man coming on the clouds, ascending to the clouds. It's usually an image of Jesus' ascension to the right hand of God. Here, it's Jesus on a white cloud, and he is overseeing the judgment that is happening, the harvest of the earth. There's a gold crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. It's not the Grim Reaper. It's Jesus. It's the Son of Man. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud. Now, remember earlier, we had him who sat on the throne. That was God. The Lamb then stood on the throne with God. But now we have Son of Man sitting on the cloud. And he's not referred to as just Jesus. He's referred to as him who sits on the cloud. We're using language like what we described God with to now describe Jesus with. Because Revelation is one of the strongest books for the deity of Jesus and the doctrine of the Trinity. So another angel, verse 15, another angel came out of the temple calling with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Have we heard that before? Like he just keeps saying, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Henry brought this up this morning in his message. He talked about how Revelation is like a diamond that you can hold up to the light and turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it and just see how the light goes through in different facets of it. Revelation is like that. So would you like to see the end from this angle? And now let's turn it and see the end from this angle and this angle. And we're just looking at the end from 1,000 different angles. And the technical word for that is what we've been saying, recapitulation. So here's another angle from which to view the end. So he who sat on the cloud, the Son of Man, swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. That's the end. Again, for the fourth or fifth time now. Then I saw another sign in heaven, a great and amazing, 7 angels with 7 plagues, who are the last, which are the last. Whew. Really, John? Is it really the last? Because you keep saying that this is the end and this is the final and then the end is near and this is the last. But he is telling the truth in that this is the introduction to 7 bowls of wrath that will be poured out. And those 7 bowls will be the last series of 7. And here we are in the very center of that second half chiastic structure, right here with these 7 plagues. So verse 2, I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass. Where was the last time we saw a sea of glass? Around the throne room in chapter 4. But this sea of glass is mingled with fire. I get like goosebumps thinking about that. Like the sea and fire do not work together, right? Unless you've got an oil spill. But I don't think we're talking about an oil spill. I think we're talking about God's cosmic sovereign control over chaos. There is fire, an image of judgment. There is a sea of glass, an image of total control. He's got this judgment under control. It's a sea of glass mingled with fire. It's going to be bad if the judgment's coming on you, but from where we're sitting, this judgment's totally under control. And those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, what are they doing? They are standing beside the sea of glass with harps in their hands, and they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, the song of the Lamb, and we'll get to that song. Okay, just unpack this. See how these images are coming back. We're the hyperlinks they're going here is just fireworks shooting in all different directions. If you pick up what's going on here. Okay, so man, just to talk about that. Those who had conquered the beast. Who conquered the beast? The Son of Man conquered the beast, but it says those who had conquered the beast. So who are those who conquered the beast? That's the 144,000 who had the seal of the Lamb, who didn't get the mark of the beast. They conquered. I didn't know that they conquered. It looked like some of them died by the beast. Yeah. That's how they win. Because they endured and they kept their faith in Jesus. That's what I was saying just a moment ago. When we endure and we keep our faith, you just conquered the beast. The image and the number of the same. And what are they doing? Those who conquer the beast, they are standing with the Lamb who was standing on Mount Zion. But now we're standing at a sea of glass. The dragon stood at the shore of a sea. The one who was set on the throne had a sea of glass underneath him. And now we get to join the standing, and we are standing with the Son of Man, who sat in the cloud, standing next to a sea of glass. We don't need to worry about this judgment. We're up there with him. And they sang, let's see, harps in their hands. Remember harps? That goes back to, remember the 24 elders. They had harps, which were the prayers of the saints. These harps here, the prayer, they're harps in our hands, they're prayers. They sang the song of Moses. Here's the prayer that we sing. We got to have a harp to sing this song. Here's the song. Great and amazing are your deeds, O Lord, the Almighty. O Lord God, the Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O King of the nations. Who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship you. Your righteous acts have been revealed. But what righteous act is God doing right now? Harvesting the earth. He's harvesting the earth, and we sing, God, you are righteous. God, you are holy. God, you are king. Who will not fear you? Because you're harvesting the earth. This is the picture of God's justice. And after this, I looked, and the sanctuary of the tent of the witness in heaven was opened, and out of the sanctuary came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, clothed in pure bright linen, with golden sashes around their chests. That's what Jesus was wearing in the vision back in chapter 1, the golden sash around his chest. And one of the 4 living creatures, I don't know if it was the ox or the eagle or the lion or the one with the face like a man, but one of them, he gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God who lives forever and ever. And the sanctuary was filled with smoke. And the sanctuary is filled with smoke. Think, sanctuary means temple. We've seen this image of the temple in heaven. When was the earthly sanctuary filled with smoke? The dedication of the tabernacle, the dedication of the temple in the days of Moses and the days of Solomon. And now we have a a new temple dedication filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power. Now, just a second ago, remember what the last time we saw smoke? It was the smoke of those who had been judged. There's good smoke and there's bad smoke. You want to be the smoke in the sanctuary, or you want to be part of that smoke in the of the burning of those who were destroyed, who followed the beast? You're going to breathe smoke one way or the other. You want the temple smoke, sanctuary smoke. I didn't used to smoke, but now I got a Traeger and it's great. Okay. Actually, it's a master built, whatever it is. I'm smoking chicken quarters this week. It's going to be great. All right. Okay, so the smoke of their glory of God and from his power, and no one could enter the sanctuary until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished. And then this is where I'm going to skip this part, because I just say, see lesson 8. That's where we did this, the 3 judgment cycles of the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and then the 7 plagues, or the 7 bowls. And we noticed that the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls were very, very similar. They followed the patterns of the plagues of Egypt back in Exodus. And we also noticed that there had been some intensifying repetition, that recapitulation, because in the first series of 7, things were 1/4. In the second series of 7, the judgments came on 1/3. But when you read through the bowls, there's no fractions. It's the whole thing. It's all. So again, that's the intensification that's going on through this. So that's what's happened right there. And that's that center of the chiasm in the back half, the second half of the book of Revelation. So now we skip ahead to chapter 17. One of the angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters." So we were standing, remember, the God's people were standing over a sea of glass mingled with fire. She sits on many waters. That's not the only thing she'll sit on. With her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. All right, so we're going to see kings of the earth. We'll see some horns on a beast that will represent kings of the earth. They're committing adultery with this harlot. She is the opposite of the woman in chapter 12. She will be the opposite of the bride. She will be the city of Babylon in chapter 18, which will be the opposite of the New Jerusalem. Then verse 3. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. We've seen wilderness a couple times. The woman in chapter 12 was taken away. She was protected in the wilderness. But now this woman is also in the wilderness. She's not protected, though. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast. Scarlet beast. Now, what was the last thing that was scarlet? What color was the dragon? The dragon was red. This beast is the color like the dragon. And the beast was covered with blasphemous names and 7 heads and 10 horns, kind of like the dragon had several heads and horns, symbols of authority on earth. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, that image of the opposite of white, like that the bride will wear. She's dressed in purple and scarlet and was with glittering gold, precious stones, and pearls. You could have said thigh-high boots, fishnet stockings, and a miniskirt. And I'd say, you know what she does for a living. But this is the clothing of a harlot in that culture. Precious stones and pearls. Those precious stones and pearls, what's going to happen in the New Jerusalem? The gates are going to be stones. The foundations will be precious stones. And we're going to use gold for pavement. Streets of gold. But she's got precious stones and pearls. They're fake. They're all cubic zirconium. They're fake jewels. The real thing is with the bride. She had a golden cup in her hand, And that was filled with the abominable things and the filth of her adultery. So I said earlier back in chapter 14 and 15, the idea of wine. So she's got that golden cup. And the name written on her forehead, as opposed to the forehead of those who follow the Lamb, was Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. That's mother of, one, prostitutes, two, abominations of the earth. So she's mother of all of them, as opposed to the mother of those who follow the Lamb, the mother of those who keep the commandments and keep the testimony of Jesus. She's a mother of prostitutes. She's a mother of the abominations of the earth. And she's got this name written on her forehead. Later in chapter 19, we're going to see a rider on a white horse that has a name written on his thigh. King of Kings and Lord of Lords. See the contrasting imagery here. And I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. Just, man, soak in that. How many of God's holy people have been sacrificed to the harlot? Man. Sometimes I think that the reason why the beast isn't quite so active in the American church is because the harlot can't be stopped. Because the harlot is drunk on the blood of so many of God's people. When we are seduced by sexual immorality, when we're seduced by materialism, we need to have eyes to see that the harlot is out there. And she looks like half the shows on Netflix. And she looks like what happens when your government defines marriage. And she looks like the porn industry. She's out there. And there's so many saints that she is drinking their blood. So we will see the command in a moment, come out of her. Come out of her, my people. The angels, I was greatly astonished when I saw her. The angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain the mystery of the woman and of the beast that she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which you saw once was, now is not, and yet will come." This is the second time we've seen that. That was back in chapter 13. But again, it's imitating the divine. This beast is trying to do and trying to be what only God can really do and what only God can really be. God really is and was and is to come. The beast can trick people into thinking that that's the truth, but it's not. The beast which you saw, which once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go into its destruction. We'll see that in chapter 19. The inhabitants of the earth. That phrase, the inhabitants of the earth, that is the phrase that is the equal opposite of 144,000. Or the equal opposite of the great multitude in heaven. That's a shorthand phrase that kind of sums up those who live on the earth. Now we live on the earth, but we are in this world, but we are not of this world. These are the people who are in the world and of the world, and they're following the beast. The inhabitants of the earth whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world will be astonished when they see the beast, because it was, now is not, and yet will come. There it is again. That refrain, the beast is a fake savior. This calls for the mind of wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. She thinks that she makes the rock and world go round, but this is an image of Rome. Some of you got my pun. She thinks she's a queen. Still rolling with it, okay. Okay. She thinks she's a queen, And the seven heads are seven hills. Why seven hills? What's famous for seven hills? Rome. Rome is built on seven hills. The harlot sits in seven hills. And the seven heads are the seven hills. What are the seven heads then? If the seven hills are Rome, the seven heads are Rome. It's just a Rome image on which the woman sits. There are also seven kings. 5 have fallen, one is, the other has not yet come. What's going on there? What was the beast? The beast was, is not, is to come. It tried to be what God could be, but it failed. These seven kings, they tried to be what God could be, and they failed. And many people have tried to identify specific Roman emperors with them. It doesn't work very well, because if you start with Julius Caesar, by the time you get to number 6, it's Galba. And he was only emperor for like 7 months. And then after him was Otho, and he was only emperor for like 3 months. So that would be number 7. And then after him was Vespasian, right? Sorry. This is what I get for trying I might be wrong. I might be missing one, but this is me trying to do the Roman emperors in order off the top of my head. But you have Vespasian, and then after him, Titus, and then Titus's older brother, Domitian, who is emperor at the time of what we think is the writing of that. So Vespasian began the Flavian dynasty. Anyway, it doesn't really work very well, any way you slice it, to try to pin these heads on that. But the big picture is, those Roman emperors, did they try to be like God? Yes. Did they fail? Yes. Did the beast try to be like God and fail? Yes. These 7 kings, they're going to try to be like God, and they're going to fail. The image can be just fulfilled in this larger idea of earthly systems who think that they can do what God can do, who think that they are what God is, and they're not. They will fail every time. That's the big image there. And again, that kind of image speaks to our world today, where governments think that they can provide in ways that only God can provide, and that they have control of truth that only God has control of, and that they have control of freedoms that God only has control of. And when governments think that they can do those things, they will fail. That's our world. And that's been every generation between now and then, hasn't it? All right. 5 have fallen, one is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. Don't worry. We're closer to the end of Rome than we are the beginning. We're closer to the end than the beginning. You can hold on tight. The beast who once was, now is not, is an 8th king, and he belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. Again, that's going to come in the next couple chapters. We'll see the destruction of the beast. Verse 12, the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. Just 1 hour. And again, if you look at that in history, you can't find that in history. It's not trying to pinpoint one thing that's specific, but it's just a big picture of, you can hold on tight because it's going to be temporary. Just be 1 hour. As opposed to the one who is and who was and is to come, because that ain't 1 hour. The opposite of forever is about an hour. Okay, so these kings think that they are like God. God reigns forever. He's going to reign like 1 hour by comparison. And they have one purpose, and will give their power and authority to the beast. And they will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of Lords and King of Kings. It's backwards, but that's what's going to be on Jesus's thigh coming up in chapter 19, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The Lamb will triumph over them. And with him will be his called and chosen and faithful followers. You might call them 144,000. You might call them a great multitude. You might call them those who have the seal of the Lamb and the Lamb's name on their forehead. But whatever you call them, this is what we're looking at, the people of the Lamb. Verse 15, then the angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits, that was way back up at the beginning of chapter 17. They are, here we go, peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. Again, there's that 4, the total earth. The beast and the 10 horns that you saw will hate the prostitute, and they will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. Okay, they're going to hate the prostitute. The beast will hate the prostitute. Satan's tool to push God's people away from Jesus is going to turn and attack Satan's tool to pull God's people away from Jesus. Have we seen Satan's tools of violence attack Satan's other tools of materialism and sexual immorality? It might look like false religion that had a prophet that preached violence, having some followers that attack a major symbol of the economy. And I'm not saying that 9/11 is the direct fulfillment of this. I am saying that when the beast attacks the harlot, the people of the Lamb don't need to choose a side, because we've already been chosen. I see a lot of times where one evil entity will attack another evil entity, and so many people in the church are like trying to figure out what side they need to jump on because we need a hot take for Twitter. And instead, the people of the Lamb, we've already got a side that we belong to. We don't need to jump on to say one thing that's out there. I mean, I could also point to like some ultra fundamentalism taking on feminism in some of its more extreme forms, where we have a bit of a beast attacking a bit of a harlot. You see the idea there. These are those kinds of images where one of Satan's forces attacks another one of Satan's forces. But the big idea, this whole chapter began with, let me show you the harlot and how she is destroyed. And here's how she gets destroyed. She gets destroyed when Satan's own evil tool turns on his other evil tool. So let's see, verse 15 again, the beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. Again, have you ever seen like world leaders that benefited from the culture they came out of and they turned around and attacked that culture? I think we've had a few, at least 10. We've had some. So that's the images that we're looking at if we have eyes open to see that. See, they will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. She began clothed in scarlet. She ends naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. She's a hottie. Whew. She gets burned with fire. She's in the smoker. Yeah. They will eat her flesh. She began drinking wine and she ends getting eaten. And what's going to happen to the beasts in chapter 19? The beasts will be eaten by the birds of the air. Okay, verse 17, for God has put it in their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Let's pretend like I only wanted to get through chapter 17 because I ended right on time. We've got chapter 18, 19, and 20 to play with next week. Chapter 18 is very, very parallel to chapter 17, where chapter 17 is focused on the pulling and the seduction of the harlot, which is an image of sexual immorality. Chapter 19 is more focused on images of materialism. So read through chapter 18 and you will see what Babylon has for sale and the woes to Babylon, for Babylon. Those who are sad to see Babylon go. And man, again, it's going to challenge and speak to us. So we'll pick up on that next week. We'll also do chapter 19 and 20, the fall of the beast, the wedding supper of the Lamb, and the fall of the dragon. And then that'll leave us for chapter 21 and 22 at the end of our series to look at the new Jerusalem, the new heavens and the new earth. So anyway, thank you for joining us. And I'm trying to hit end show here. Here we go. All right. Have a great night.